Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, police say that at least 86 people have been killed in Nigeria's Middle Belt in fatal clashes between farmers and nomadic herdsmen. The growing conflict over resources risks becoming deadlier than the Boko Haram insurgency. We hear more from our correspondent. Also, Algeria is accused of turning its back on migrants at their most vulnerable. Rights activists say Algiers abandoned more than 13,000 people in the Sahara desert in a little over a year. And in Northern Cameroon, the instability caused by Boko Haram attacks leaves women looking for ways to make an income with few choices. Many are resorting to taking on the dangers of mining rocks. But first, Nigeria's president warned against revenge attacks after the deaths of dozens of people were blamed on Fulani herdsmen in Plateau state. The government was slow to release a death toll, but local police claimed that there were at least 86 victims of this latest violence. Dawn-to-dusk curfews have been brought in for communities including Jos, South and Barkin Ladi. Clashes between nomadic herdsmen and farmers in the Middle Belt are increasingly common. There are fears that the dangers could rival those of the Boko Haram insurgency. Well, Sam Olukoya tells us more. He's in Lagos for us. Sam, what more do you know about what happened in and around Jos over the weekend?
Well, the much we know is that it was a kind of reprisal attack, as the herdsmen put it, that a number of their cows were stolen, and on that grounds they decided to act, and in doing this, so many lives were lost. This started during a funeral. Many of the guests at that funeral were ambushed. Some of them were killed, and suddenly the whole thing spread across the Barkin Ladi local government area. The police said as many as 86 people were killed, but local people said the death toll definitely goes far beyond that. Some put it at about 150 dead.
So we've seen a lot of back and forth and this risk of reprisal attacks. Does all of it, what's the scale of all of these clashes? Could they truly rival the violence that's been seen with the Boko Haram insurgency?
Yeah, definitely they can rival the violence of the Boko Haram insurgency. The Boko Haram insurgency has been largely confined to the northeastern part of Nigeria, but we are seeing a crisis that is spreading across Nigeria. You are talking of a country of about 190 million people. Virtually all parts of Nigeria has experienced this crisis, either north, south, west, or east. So in terms of scope, yes, it definitely will rival that. And in terms of the brutality we've seen of children, babies being killed, I think many Nigerians fear that this could escalate very seriously. And a third dimension to this is that those involved in this are not just Nigerians. A number of Fulanis from neighboring West African countries are moving into Nigeria, where they feel they have a good land to rear their cows. So it's attracting quite a number of people from outside of Nigeria, and there are fears it could escalate not just between cattle herders and farmers, but between Christians and Muslims. The farmers are Christians and the herdsmen are Muslims, essentially.
Thanks very much, Sam Olukoya, there for us in Nigeria. Well, South Sudan's president met his arch rival once again on Monday as part of ramped-up regional efforts to kickstart stalled peace talks. Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar are at the centre of their country's bloody 4.5-year civil war. They were in Khartoum on Monday after coming face-to-face for the first time in 2 years in Ethiopia last week. Now, that attempt faltered, but mediators are still hoping that negotiations can be salvaged. Kiir claims that he wants the meeting to bring an end to the South Sudanese conflict. Both sides risk UN sanctions if a deal isn't reached soon. Now, Algeria is being accused of turning its back on migrants at their most vulnerable. Rights activists accuse Algiers of abandoning more than 13,000 African migrants in the Sahara Desert. Take a closer look.
Janet Camara was abandoned in the desert with no food or water last month. She was pregnant at the time.
My baby passed away.
Did you bury him?
Yes, the people helped me. 1 or 2 men, a Guinean, 1 Sierra Leonean. They all helped me.
Like Janet, hundreds of other migrants have found refuge in this center in Arlit, northern Niger, after being deported by Algerian authorities and abandoned by human traffickers. They were left with no choice but to walk across the 15-kilometer no-man's land from the Algerian border to the town of Asamaka, some 200 kilometers north of Arlit. Jew Dennis, a migrant from Liberia, filmed his deportation with his mobile phone.
There we were deported at midnight where you have no electricity, you don't even know where you were. It was like a wilderness, a complete wilderness. We had to walk up to 6-7 hours where I felt my legs were even being cut off because I couldn't even make it anymore, so we had to sleep in the desert.
The International Organization for Migration says some 13,000 migrants have been expelled from Algeria in the past 14 months. Many arrive in Niger completely disoriented and dehydrated. Others simply don't make it.
They come by the thousands. The expulsions that I'm seeing, I've never seen anything like it.
Algeria denies accusations of rights abuses and says it is complying with international law. North African countries have come under increasing pressure from the European Union to curb migration flows to Europe.
Now, in Ethiopia, 20 people appeared in court in Addis on Monday following a grenade attack at a rally for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Saturday. 2 people were killed in that explosion. On the same day, in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, a blast rocked a campaign rally by President Emerson Mnangagwa. That also killed 2 people. Both targeted gatherings were held by new leaders promising change. For a closer look at that, we're joined by Nicholas Germain. Nick, take us through what's going on in Ethiopia. Could what's happening there be linked to a backlash from the old guard?
It's possible. In Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, he was only designated prime minister in April, and since then he's taken a lot of decisions that have surprised many. He's released thousands of political prisoners, he's ended the state of emergency, he's admitted that security services have tortured people. And most surprisingly, maybe, he said that he wants to make peace with Eritrea. He said that Ethiopia would finally accept a 2002 border ruling made by an independent commission after their bloody war that left 80,000 people dead. And we know that this has angered, this last decision, the minority group in the Tigray region in the north of the country. They've openly said that they criticize this peace offer to Eritrea. And what's interesting is that Abiy Ahmed, he was designated in April to calm the tensions in Ethiopia. There'd been a lot of protests for the last 3 years, especially against the minority Tigrayan group, which had been in power for nearly 30 years. Abiy Ahmed, he was designated because he's an Oromo, and the Oromos are the major ethnic group in Ethiopia.
So what are the possible similarities in terms of the political landscape as we see it in Zimbabwe and the attack we saw over the weekend?
Well, what happened in Zimbabwe back in November, Emerson Mnangagwa, he forced Robert Mugabe's exit. And so in what people are saying in Zimbabwe, that those who targeted him were probably close allies of Mugabe who've lost a lot since he's arrived in power. They said that they wanted to get rid of him before next month's presidential election. What observers are saying is that during this electoral campaign in Zimbabwe, opposition parties have been much freer to operate than under Mugabe. Also, Mnangagwa has invited Western electoral observers. That's a first in 20 years. And since November, he's tried to attract a lot of foreign investment into Zimbabwe. So in both countries, in Zimbabwe and Ethiopia, reformists were targeted. And now, of course, the big question is, faced with these threats, are they going to maintain their reforms, or are they going to become more and more authoritarian like their predecessors?
Thanks very much, Nicholas Schonner, there for us. Well, in Northern Cameroon, the instability caused by Boko Haram attacks has left women looking for new ways to make an income, and there are few choices available. Many are resorting to taking on the dangers of mining rocks. Our correspondents tell us more.
All she needs to begin is a locally made hammer and a spot on the hills. Bafdam, a mother of 8 children, has been working here for close to 7 years, providing for her family by crushing stones under the pounding Marwa heat.
I have no choice. I am able to cater for my family and send my children to school by crushing these rocks.
It's a tough life, but more and more women in the far north region are choosing to head up these mountains to make a living. Mothers who are determined to keep their children in school. It is dangerous work. Though some turn a profit, at least 2 women have died in landslides over the past 6 months.
The landslide swallowed them up and they died on the spot.
Large chunks of stones are brought down and handed over to another group of women at the foot of the mountain. Sadio is a widow and mother of 5 children. She crushes the rocks into gravel she hopes to sell to builders for a pittance.
If we're lucky sometimes, we go home with 1,000 or 1,500 francs after a day's work. Sometimes we're unlucky and we go home empty-handed.
They make between 1 and 2 euros daily, which is barely enough to feed themselves for a day. To be able to better negotiate and sell at a reasonable price, the women have created a cooperative. Their leader, Martha, deals with potential buyers.
They bring down the stones, which we crush here. We later make heaps of graves, which we sell to our clients.
Clients can be scarce, but 24-year-old Suzanne is very hopeful.
If it is the will of God, I'd like to go back to school this year.
She holds on to the dream of rebuilding her life with money earned by crushing rocks. A hope held by millions of girls in Cameroon's far north region whose lives have been badly affected by the Boko Haram insurgency.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.